Sea of Stars is probably the game I was most looking forward to in the second half of this year. Like from fall into winter of 2023, I was super looking forward to Sea of Stars. And I finally finished it, I wrapped it up, I beat the game, and here's my review. Here are my thoughts about it. The graphics are pretty good, the music is pretty good too. I enjoyed the music and the graphics. I would say overall though, the first kind of 5 hours of the game, like the first third, the first portion of the game, it's just fantastic. It's actually really enjoyable. You have all these different spells and different moves. You meet a bunch of, unique looking characters, and they're a little bit different than usual. And it really reminds me of, some of my favorite RPGs, which happen to be Super Nintendo RPGs, Chrono Trigger and Final Fantasy VI. Yeah, I'm real original. However, after the 5 hour mark, I started to get a little bit bored, and by I think it was the 10 hour mark, I stopped recording the game. The 15 hour mark, I decided I wasn't going to finish it. So I looked up to see how much of the game I had left, and I didn't have that much left to go, so I ended up just sucking it up, watching a couple movies on one monitor and beating the game on the other. And it took me roughly 22 hours to complete Sea of Stars. I think the game is okay. I looked up a bunch of reviews, and it seems that most people find it to be mediocre or passable. And I guess I'm going to break down why I think this game falls off pretty hard the longer you play it, and why I believe some people just have a higher tolerance for that than I do. In this footage, because again, I only recorded the first half of the game, you're going to see that these two main characters have two spells starting out. The fire guy, he has fireball and he has heal, and the moon girl, she has reflecting moon disc and she has like a moon swipe. At the end of the game, when I beat the final boss, they don't have two spells each, they have 3 spells each. That's hopefully that articulates a problem with the mechanics. The game is very, very stingy, and to the point of that the game is stale mechanically. The first part of the game, I think the game's actually very good. It's really enjoyable. You get to test out all these abilities, see what works, what doesn't, try different things, and then that's it. It turns out actually everything they give you at the start of the game is all you're really going to get, and the game never gets more mechanically complex or engaging. It doesn't give you more stuff to customize. Your equipment doesn't matter, really. You just keep picking the next higher upgraded thing. And I don't want to compare this game too much to Chrono Trigger or Final Fantasy VI or anything, but in other RPGs, you can customize your characters by giving them different types of rings that have more dramatic effects than just plus 5 HP or plus 10 attack or something. So it doesn't really feel like these characters mechanically feel unique, and the game itself does not get very mechanically challenging at any point. When I beat the final boss, I thought there was going to be a phase 3 because I never used a combo move and I never used an ultimate move to beat the final boss. And I didn't use an item to beat the final boss either. I am not some god gamer. That is a pathetically easy boss because the mechanics the game taught me in the first hour never changed or adapted or developed throughout the entire 22 hour experience. And that is a problem. The game got incredibly boring and stale for me. Story-wise, the game offers up these two characters. They are wet noodles. They are completely uninteresting. All of the character development, if you even want to call it character development, happens to the surrounding characters, who are more interesting than the two main Solstice children. But at the same time, these side characters, once you hear their first 2 lines of dialogue, that is their character. They will never change. It is pretty unsatisfying. I figured the story was going to go places, and it never really did. Every time Sea of Stars introduced a new idea, it just never seemed to capitalize or really flesh out that idea in an interesting or meaningful way. Now, I'm not saying video games have to be complex and they don't have to be really deep and flesh out a lot of stuff. But for me, if your game is going to be over 20 hours long, it can't be so basic. And Sea of Stars is a very basic video game. And I mean that. It is simplistic. It is simplistic to the point of being an immature video game. Narratively, there is no complexity happening here, and mechanically there is no complexity. It is just kind of a huge slog to the point that, again, I got 12 or 15-ish hours into the game and I just put it down and I did not want to finish it anymore because I thought there was so much left of the game, and it turns out there really isn't. I'm looking at my notes here and I don't really have anything else to say. I mean, I have tons of nitpicks. So many. Well, normally I would say that nitpicks would probably bring the game down, and they do for a lot of people. But for me, I don't even care to bring up any of these nitpicks, any of these small complaints, because the biggest complaints are the characters are boring, the world is underdeveloped, the story kind of expects me to care about stuff that is barely mentioned or addressed. Like, technically, the final boss is this thing that I think got mentioned once. Like, I do want to talk about the ending of the game. Some slight spoilers. So I guess I'll say Sea of Stars, a 4 out of 10. I don't think it's worth playing. There are plenty of better video games out there. I can't think of a reason to play the game. Which is a very cruel thing to say, I guess, but I feel really bad. I ended up having a lot of expectations for Sea of Stars, and Sea of Stars gives itself a lot of expectations when you start playing it, and it never delivers. That's on the game, that it introduced those expectations for me, the player, and it truly never delivers on them. When you beat the game, the actual ending of Sea of Stars is just miserable. And I don't mean that it's sad. I mean that, what's the word I want? The ending of Sea of Stars isn't sad. It's just disappointing. Like, underwhelming. There it is. It's underwhelming. And I've read that a few people really didn't like the ending of the game, and that a lot of other people were also disappointed. Some people liked it, some people didn't, but it's very underwhelming. And I got so frustrated because afterwards, I'm looking up about the game and I find out that there is a better ending, the real ending of the game. And the real ending requires you to basically 100% the game. You have to collect all these little rainbow conch shells, as well as doing a bunch of side quests. And I looked up how long that would take, and it would take a couple hours. A personal, I don't want to call it a pet peeve, it's like a real frustration I have, is when video games hide the real ending behind 100% completion. I gave this game 20 hours of my life. For some reason, that means I don't deserve the real ending of the game. I have to give it even more hours of my life to get the real ending of the game. And to me, I find that very disrespectful. I beat the game, and they gave me a bad ending. It's a lackluster ending, and I did go to YouTube and watch the real ending. Would I have liked the game more if I had the real ending? No, I wouldn't have. I think both endings are pretty mediocre, but there is a difference, I guess, to giving a deliberately mediocre ending to a game to sort of tease players into playing more of it, to go back and 100% all of your side content. To me, I think that is incredibly insulting and disrespectful to their player base, and plenty of people have been pretty upset about this. And that's probably it. I don't like Sea of Stars. I can see why some people would like it, but for me, the core of the game is bad. It just peters out. It stalls. It gets stale. It just wasn't very engaging to me narratively or mechanically. I was bored, and the last 5 hours of the game, I was miserable. And so I wouldn't recommend Sea of Stars. I wouldn't say try the demo because the demo is really good, but the game only goes downhill after the demo. So yeah, I don't know, kind of a huge bummer for me, honestly.